Um, sorry, but we're rambling here and we're losing track. So one of the ways to do this has been through the use of data collection. We've made sure that we're challenging people's perceived notions of what's happening and using data to actually saying that. So when teachers are coming up and saying, well, the class is out of control, we're able to pull out the data and say, well, hang on a minute, let's look at what's actually happening here. There's only been 3 referrals in the last 2 weeks, so what do you mean they're out of control? Billy's unmanageable. Well, hang on a minute, he's only been relocated twice in the last 2 weeks, so what do you mean he's unmanageable? So the data collection has been really, really important to us. And as part of that, what we've had to do is to look at our practices and structures and have an honest conversation with ourselves about what's working and what's not. And if things weren't working, we had to get rid of them. So we have a similar process in place with the relocation thing for the naughtier kids, whether they're D kids or not, I'm not sure. And we found that the first 2 parts of it were working well. You know, people knew how to relocate kids. It's the exact same process. When a child is sent out of class, they're sent to the front office, they get an allocation slip, they're sent to a senior class, they spend that time in the senior class. The teacher, plays no role other than having them there for the period. But they then assigned a time that they have to go back and speak to their teacher. Now that's when it was falling down, because the follow-up conversation in some cases wasn't happening. So we had to, being a little bit controlling, we had to introduce this component, which is the follow-up conference slip. And all of these are colour-coded, and we made this one bright yellow so that when this happened, it had to come back to us to go into, we have a temporary file for the kids. We wanted to get away from the old practices of having files that have Billy threw a pencil, all those bits of paper that coordinators are used to drowning in. We don't have those anymore. We have temporary files that we periodically cull, and the only stuff that we keep in there are the information that's crucial to looking at that kid's development. And now when people come up to us and say, well, so-and-so's doing this, so-and-so's doing that, we look to see whether the follow-up conferences are taking place. And that's a way of holding teachers accountable. And our aim is that eventually we'll get rid of that slip and that it will be happening naturally. So using that with data collection to look at patterns for particular kids or patterns for particular staff members. And it's not what's the word?
You wanted to help.
Yeah, it's just to see whether there's someone that might need support. It's not to identify someone that's failing or being a bad teacher, but to identify, look, there's a problem here. So instead of us talking about it behind closed doors, let's identify it, see what supports we need to put in place and fix it. So that's been a big part of our focus this year, looking at what we're doing, looking how we can refine it and tweak it.
Yes. The only other thing that we're looking at discussing with staff, obviously in a merged school after 1 year they've had enormous change and it might be too early yet, but it's to look at the timetable structure and see whether our period set up as we've got it at the moment is appropriate for our students, or if there's another model that that may suit them better. But we've got to gauge how the staff are feeling about that, because they have gone through enormous change.
So the important thing for us at the moment is to challenge people's preconceived notions about kids. If they understand that kids are different, we want to get them to the point where they have to understand that what they're teaching needs to be different, and what they're using as discipline strategies need to be different as well. And fits in beautifully with where we're heading in the line of personalised learning as well. So we feel like we're making process and we're putting some blocks in place. What we've learned from our experience this year is the need for, as we said, focused leadership. We need for people that are willing to drive things, and understanding that the process takes place. As I said, it'd be interesting to talk to the other merger people 12 months from now, because we feel like we still need another 12 months to get this stuff going. But that's okay. Initially, we were putting a lot of pressure on ourselves. Oh, it's not working, what's happening? But we're where we're at, and we'll be where we're going to be in 6 months' time, and that's just part of it. I suppose the main thing is the need to be consistent. If you're not consistent, if it's not happening in every class, with every teacher, every time, you're setting yourself up for failure. And you have to come back and reflect and review. You can't just sort of muddle along and without asking the question, how are we doing? And be prepared to ask the hard questions, have the difficult conversations. But one of the things that we're focusing on with that is really just having professional conversations and getting people to raise the bar professionally and to model best practice at all times. So that's us.